Quality is super important for manufacturers because they have to produce the best quality goods that they can, and our software helps them manage the quality side of their business as well. The real trick with product management is you got a million things you can do. The trick is to figure out which ones not to do, because you'll always have a list. There's always a backlog. There's always a massive number of things that every customer said, hey, I want this and I want this. The real trick is figuring out what not to do.
Tell us about some of your early mistakes in product management.
There's always a million things you could do. You got to figure out which one's the most important. You got to figure out which ones are the right things. The one thing that I found over the years is the most important trait for a product manager is intellectual honesty. And what I tell people is you got to go figure out why you're wrong. Because if you don't figure out why you're wrong, you're going to build things and you're going to be wrong a lot of the time because you're tailoring the data to fit what you think is what your customers need. And that's wrong.
As a chief product officer, there are many products. How do you focus?
My job running a large portfolio like this is to figure out where are those things that I can maximize the value that I can drive for the company. And again, in the context of the value that I can drive for customers as well, because customers at the end of the day are paying the bills. They're paying my salary. And I have to make sure that we're building the right things for them and that we're delivering to them the value that not only is going to get them to continue to be my customer, but also at the same time deliver value to us as well.
Some distributors are becoming manufacturers now, and some manufacturers also want to distribute so then they can work directly with the customer. Where do you think this is heading as a technology provider?
I believe firmly that technology is an enabler. Technology is how you grow. Technology is how you get rid of the mundane and you let your teams focus on the things that provide value to your customers.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Driven by DCKAP. I'm your host, Karthik Chidambaram, CEO of DCKAP. We make systems talk to each other. We are here in Austin, Texas with Jim Hansen, Chief Product Officer of Advantive, makers of distribution and manufacturing software. Jim has a wealth of experience in product management, product leadership, and really excited to be talking to you today, Jim, and welcome to Driven by DCKAP.
I appreciate it. Yeah, my pleasure to be here with you today.
So Jim, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about Advantive? What do you guys do? And you make manufacturing and distribution software. Tell us about Advantive, how Advantive was created.
Yeah, sure. So started in a little dark room. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't a dark room, but we the business itself came together right around the July of 2022 timeframe. And it was really the creation of what our owners, TA and Associates, think of as a platform business. And so what they had this really interesting idea of taking a number of different businesses that existed out there, very successful, great product types of businesses, bringing them together and forming a larger business. And that's effectively what we've done. So we have brought 6 basic companies together. This was in the 2022 timeframe. And since then, we've actually acquired 6 additional businesses and brought them all into the fold as well. And in the end, what we have is a business that delivers high quality business software for manufacturers and distributors. And we cater specially to the different kinds of businesses that are kind of specialty in nature. Think of them as like those plumbing markets where if you needed, for example, an enterprise resource planning type of tool, you could go off and you could buy one of the big guys, or you can get something that's really tailored and suited for what you do as a company. That's what we do, is we provide specialty software for those kinds of businesses, manufacturers and distributors, and it spans 4 different functional areas. We have products that fit into our packaging market, where think of packaging like boxes, corrugated sheets. Not a sexy market, but one that is massive and incredibly important to the entire supply chain of how everybody distributes their goods, right? And we as a business have software that helps those organizations build those boxes and build those corrugated sheets that they can then go sell and make available to the broader businesses across the world. We have a secondary part of our business, which is very similar to what I just described, but it's more focused on manufacturing execution. So think of all the other kinds of manufacturers that have to go build things, whether it's the camera or the stand that this camera is sitting on, our jackets, the rings, any other device you can think of. Everything you look around is manufactured somewhere. Well, they have to have tools that allow them to be able to compile the parts, to put those parts together, and ultimately produce those goods that then get distributed across the world. So we do that too. We have manufacturing execution software that allows customers to do that. The third part of our portfolio is more focused on quality. Well, those same things that you produce need to have a certain level of quality. So we can measure everything from temperature to how much liquid is in a bottle if you're a bottler, to other kinds of quality factors. It might just be the size of the thing that you're creating, the weight of it. Could be, again, something inside of a container, et cetera, et cetera. And that quality is super important for manufacturers because they have to produce the best quality goods that they can. And our software helps them manage the quality side of their business as well. And then the last part is really kind of the end of the supply chain, which is how do you then get everything to market? And we do that through distribution. So we have a sizable component of our business, which is focused on distribution. And we produce, ERP software, mission critical types of things that help these businesses manage everything from their sales to their inventory to even how they package and place things on a truck.
I love your business model where you acquire a bunch of companies which are doing really, really well and you make them a larger company. We also work with a couple of companies right now, DDI and D1, Distribution One. It's really, really interesting business model. You pick the best players in the market, but small, but looking to get big, and you group them together. Yeah. So TA does that well.
They do. And I'll tell you, D1 or Distribution One and DDI System are the two distribution products, two of three actually, that we have within our portfolio that we acquired, we brought in, and I'll tell you, they're amazing products. I go out and I have the privilege as a chief product officer to go spend a lot of time with customers. And as part of that, I ask them, like, why do you buy? Why do you buy this? Like, you could buy anything. Why did you buy our software? And what I continuously hear is we've got the best software in the market. They love the software. They love what it does. They love the simplicity. They love the ease of deployment. They love their ability to be able to just get it into their environments and leverage it quickly to deliver the business value that they're expecting. So I am thrilled to have the distribution piece within our business. You could think, well, gosh, we could have just focused on manufacturing, but it turns out manufacturers distribute too. And so, there's this nice synergy between having solutions within our portfolio that actually satisfied both the manufacturing side of the business and the distribution side of the business. As we can continue to grow, we look for those opportunities to find things that can help fill in those gaps of things that our customers need.
You have a wealth of experience, Jim. Worked at companies like Riverbed, SolarWinds, did product management. I'm curious to know about your early career journey, right? So tell us about it.
Yeah.
What got you here?
Gosh, I never expected to be in product management, I'll tell you that, right? In my early career, I actually went in to be an electrical engineer. I went to school for electrical engineering, came out, and I was thinking I was going to go build circuit boards. That's what I thought I was going to do. And I had this distinct privilege getting out to join a small consulting organization doing, as it turns out, ERP implementations for Lawson and JD Edwards and a little bit of SAP. And this is back in the 90s, right? A long time ago. And, what was interesting is that, doing that consulting work really taught me a lot about really just listening, understanding customers. And so, after doing that for a little while, working in that consulting firm, I had this really great idea of moving from Southern California up to the Bay Area. And I was like, I'm going to go into the dot-com boom. There's all this great opportunity up there, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I got there just in time for it to all crash, right? So I joined this little company, and I had a blast while I was there, but the company folded. And so I started looking around, and I found another consulting gig. So you can think of my really early career, I really just did consulting, right? And so software implementation effectively. And I was working at a small company, started out its name as Adamark Technologies. About midway through my tenure there, we renamed it to Sensage. And there's a little security information and event management type of solution, right? Basically, we took log data and made sense of it. That's what we did. And it was about halfway through my career. I had 3 little kids at home, and my wife looked at me one day and she's like, I didn't want to be a single mom. I was on the road all the time. And she's like, I really need you to be home. And so I went and I sat down with our CEO at the time. His name's Jim Flaging. And I said, I got to find a new job. And so I gave him my resignation and tore it up. And he's like, I got a different idea for you. It's like, how about product management? I looked at him blankly and I was like, I don't know what that is. What? Tell me about it. And he explained his perspective, and he explained it so simply. It's always stuck with me over the years. And that is, like, being a product manager is about building a business, building the product and defining what you're going to take to market, how you're going to take to market, and so forth. He's like, but the real trick with product management is you got a million things you can do. The trick is to figure out which ones not to do, because you'll always have a list. There's always a list. There's always a backlog. There's always a massive number of things that every customer said, hey, I want this and I want this. The real trick is figuring out what not to do. And that's stuck with me over the years because he was right. And at the time, I wouldn't have guessed it, right? I was like, okay, let's do it. I'll become a product manager. So I became a product manager. And so I did that for a number of years, and I worked at a number of small startup companies out of the Bay Area while I was doing that. One of which was a company called Splunk, who recently got acquired by Cisco, of course, right? And as part of that journey, I got this privilege to come in and build their applications business. And I worked with a woman who hired me in multiple different places. Her name's Christina Noren, and mentor still even to this day for me. And one of the things that I found just intriguing about the business was that we were solving big data problems before big data was a term, right? And as part of that, I worked in an organization where you'd almost look at it kind of like Oracle, where Oracle's got this database, and like you go talk to Oracle people like, oh, got the database, right? And they don't really talk about like their applications, which actually make a ton of money for them, right? It's all about the database. They are a database company. Splunk was like that in the early days too. And it was a challenge because trying to convince everyone, we've got to build applications. Applications are the step function. This is how we go make more money. It was a really big challenge. It was like antibodies fighting the virus in the system. And we got through it. And I'll tell you, Splunk was probably one of the most amazing companies I had ever worked with. But I learned a lot about becoming a good product manager in the process. Kind of fast forward over the years, moved into higher level roles throughout my career. And eventually here I am as a chief product officer at Advantive.
No, I love Splunk. I was following Splunk for quite a bit, in terms of how they were running the company, and they went public and all that. So it was really, really interesting story. And I also think that the early consulting experience really helps because, when you're young, you can travel the world and, it's easier. So, you just be here, be there, do all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And then, you get on to product management and, it's really, I would say, it's fascinating, so it's very interesting. So tell us about some of your early mistakes in product management.
Doing product management in the early 2000s, it wasn't really a thing. There was no book, couldn't go find a blog. At that point, we were just kind of getting past bulletin boards, right? There wasn't a place to go to learn. So I had to learn it on the job. And to your point, I made a lot of mistakes, right? There was a lot of places where, and frankly, the biggest mistake, and I tell all my product managers that I work with now, it comes back to that first point that I mentioned a few minutes ago. There's always a million things you could do. You got to figure out which one's the most important. You got to figure out which ones are the right things. And I'll tell you, the one thing that I found over the years is the most important trait for a product manager is intellectual honesty. It is so easy to think that you're the smart guy in the room. You've had all these conversations. You think you know everything about everything. And you say, here's what we're going to go build. And then you go and you find data to support why you're right. And what I tell people is you got to go figure out why you're wrong. Because if you don't figure out why you're wrong, you're going to build things and you're going to be wrong a lot of the time because you're tailoring the data to fit what you think is what your customers need. And that's wrong. And I tell you, in my early career, I did it all the time. And I learned over the years after building many things that were not the right thing, that you have to take a step back and you have to stay completely objective about what it is that you're building. You can't fall in love with your product. I tell people too, don't fall in love with your product. You got to be ready to throw it out with the bathwater if you need to. But you want to find the things that are most important, that provide value to customers. Because if you can find those things, if you can understand their problem, understand what gives them value, what drives value, what makes them a superhero inside of their business, if you can figure those things out, you have a much higher probability of success than not. And again, early in my career, I didn't know that. So I'd walk into a room, and a CEO says, hey, what do you think we're going to build? And I had to be confident in these things that I thought. But I hadn't really quite learned that you got to go spend time with customers. You got to get in front of them. You got to understand them. You've got to learn what they do. You have to learn how they operate. You got to learn how they think. What does their environment look like? How do they have to do their jobs every day? And when you understand that, now you can start to take and you put yourself into their shoes. And it comes down to empathy, right? You got to be able to empathize with the way that they operate and identify those acute problems that not only are something that's going to make their lives better, or make their companies better, but are also going to be things that they're willing to pay for. And that would be my second mistake, is I built a lot of things over the years, right? Where you build them and you're like, it's going to be great. It's field of dreams. You're going to go build this thing and they're going to love this thing. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God, that didn't do well. And if you really took a step back with intellectual honesty and you said, all right, why didn't it work? It's most of the time because you chose to focus on the wrong stuff.
I love the term intellectual honesty. So you're being very true to what you're building, and also don't fall in love with the product. I thought that's pretty cool, right? Because don't fall in love with the product and do things that make money. Otherwise, whatever great things you build, it's not really going to go anywhere.
That's right. Well, and that objectivity is really important, right? And I tell you, well, I'll mention one more thing. I tell all my product managers all the time, if I see you fall in love with your product, I'm going to put you on a different product because I need you to stay objective, right? And the minute you fall in love with it, your perspective changes and you're no longer able to be purely objective about whether something that you have is good or bad, something that needs to be improved, or something that just needs to go away, right? And that's hard, especially in a large portfolio of technology. You got a lot of things. I've got 30 products in my portfolio today. And across those 30 products, I've got some amazing products. I've got other ones, they're okay. Can I make them better? Probably. But where am I going to best be able to go drive value for the company, but also make sure that I give the right value to our customers in the process?
That's my next question too. At Advantive, you have a lot of products and you're acquiring a lot of companies as well. You have acquired a lot of companies. So how do you manage this, right? I mean, as a chief product officer, there are many products. How do you focus?
It's an interesting challenge. And I'll tell you, every portfolio is a little bit different. I ran a sizable portion of SolarWinds and their very large portfolio. Riverbed, I had a large portfolio. Here, I have a large portfolio. It's really about identifying, and look, as a company, we are beholden to our shareholders, right? I have investment firms that are saying they want to make money at the end of the day. And we are a company that is there to help make money. So, it's funny because, I've had some conversations with a couple of our board members where, really, what is my real job? Chief Value Officer. That's really what I do, right? My job is to identify value and then go exploit that value, get it into the hands of customers so that they'll continue to renew, right? I need those renewal dollars because it helps me go build more stuff. And then I also want to go find new business. And so my job running a large portfolio like this is to figure out where are those things that I can maximize the value that I can drive for the company. And again, in the context of the value that I can drive for customers as well, because customers at the end of the day are paying the bills, right? They're paying my salary. And I have to make sure that we're building the right things for them and that we're delivering to them the value that not only is going to get them to continue to be my customer, but also at the same time, deliver value to us as well, right? Because we have to continue to grow as a company because, we are owned by people that want money. So makes sense.
Yeah, but then let's say, you have 4 or 5 products, right? So, and then, you're managing all these products and one product is obviously doing really well, paying the bills. But then there's another product which is not doing so well. So, and maybe the team's not great and there are some challenges there and all that. But that is a problem, right? Because let's say you're serving an industry and that industry needs this solution and you have a product for that. But just that product is not great. And maybe you don't have the right team to support it. How do you deal with that situation? Because I have run into that problem, or we have run into that problem, right? Yeah. So let's say you don't have the right people, then would you continue investing in the product, find somebody else? Or would you just say, let's just pause right now because they say, focus is very important. Yeah. So let me just work on this and then let me get to that later. What would you do?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a tough question because every situation is a little bit different. And as you look at any portfolio, whether it's any of the ones that I've managed, you go to like a company like HP or IBM or anybody that has a large number of products, and you're always making decisions about what to invest in, what to maybe invest a little bit less in, and things maybe that, does it really make sense to have it in the portfolio long term? The way that we think about it at Advantive, I don't sunset products. That we have customers that are running products from, years and years ago, and they get value out of it. So, I continue to make sure that we're supporting those customers appropriately, that we're providing them the right value. Now, am I building new things? Maybe not. In some cases, I also see a product that I might say, hey, like this thing here, man, this thing is a growth opportunity. We can go find new customers. We can get our customers to expand. I can get them to use more of it, which again, helps me, helps them too. But at the same time, and so those decisions are very specific to the environment that you're in. And I'll tell you, between my experience here at Advantive, Riverbed, SolarWinds, and the companies even before that, every situation was a little bit different, right? What the advice that I would give anybody with a larger portfolio is think about what you have and find the places where you can deliver the most value at the lowest cost. Because at the end of the day, the less you spend getting the value in front of the customers, the more I can spend elsewhere. right? And I don't have unlimited funding. I can't do all the things that everybody wants to do. And it kind of comes back to what I said right at the beginning, right? I've always got a list. I have a list of thousands of things that I could go build. Which ones are the ones that are most important? How do I help the most customers get the most value with the least amount of money that I spend on it so that I can make sure that I can do more things that give them more value beyond that?
Yeah, keep saying no to, right? Because there's obviously a lot of things you can take on, but then don't take on everything that comes your way. And that becomes a
100%. Yeah. And it's sometimes it's hard. It's hard to tell a customer no, right? When a customer is saying, I really need this thing. My general approach is, and again, this is kind of how I tell my team to operate, is you got to go understand it. So go spend time. The customer says, hey, I need this thing. We're not doing that. Tell me about it. What problem are you trying to solve? Why do you need this thing? How is this going to help you do your job better? And show me what your experience is. And sometimes, like, there have been situations in my career where I've seen a customer, they tell me they want something, like, that's silly. I don't think you need that. Let's talk about it. We talk about it. And then they're like, no, you got to see it. You got to understand. I go visit with them and I watch them do their job. I'm like, oh my God, I totally get it. I absolutely understand. This is creating a huge amount of anxiety for you as a customer every day. And I've actually changed product decisions in order to be able to make sure, again, that we're providing them the right value. It's just it's a challenge to figure out the right things to do and the right things not to do. But at the end of the day, if you spend time with customers, if you know them and you understand them, and again, you kind of proverbially put yourself into their shoes, you will make the right decisions more times than not. And it doesn't mean that everybody's always going to be happy. And that's always the challenge. You're going to lose customers every now and again, right? It's what they call churn, right? Even the best of businesses might be at 93, 94% retention. You're still losing a couple, right? And that's okay, because it might mean that you just weren't the right fit for them, or that they're not the right fit for you. And sometimes those decisions are tough, but you have to be okay with it. As long as you have clarity on what it is that they need, you can continue to grow and drive customers and grow the business.
Yeah, don't sweat over it. If you lose customers, it's okay, right?
It's okay.
And as a chief product officer, how do you spend your time, right? Like, for example, 1/3 of your time is spent on customers or 1/3 on people.
Yeah.
Do you have anything around that?
Oh boy, yeah, that's an interesting one. I have a pretty firm belief, and I've done this most of my career. You got to spend time with customers, certainly, right? And more so as a product manager than as a chief product officer. I spend time with some of our larger customers. Gosh, in the last 3 months, I've traveled to 3 or 4 different locations, and I've met with a number of them. The thing that I think is most important is you got to spend time with your own people. Like, I have to teach my team how to go ask the right questions, how to have the right conversations. Think of me as more of a personal trainer than going to a spa. I'm not a spa. Like, if you want to come work for me, I'm not a spa. I'm not the guy that's going to, put the towel over your face and rub your shoulders. I am the guy that's going to teach you how to be the best freaking product manager alive. And that's something that, as I've watched people that I've mentored over the years progress, I have wonderful people. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. There's a young lady that used to work for me years ago. I won't mention her name since we're on a podcast, so she'll know who she is when she listens. And she was one of my employees. She was actually a product marketing manager. And she came to me and she's like, Jim, I'd really love to try my hat at being a product manager. I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And so she went and made her a product manager. A couple weeks later, she comes into my office. She's like, Jim, what percentage chance do you think I'm going to be successful? I was like, probably about 10%. And she didn't take offense to it, right? But she definitely took it to heart. And what I loved about her is that she took that and turned it into her personal mission to be awesome. Fast forward, she's a vice president in product management now for a software company out of the Bay Area, and she's amazing. She's one of the best product managers I ever had working for me in my career. And it's wonderful for me to watch people go through and do this job. If I could think back to when I was an early product manager, no one taught me. I had to kind of just figure it out. And so I kind of look at it as my personal mission to make sure that everybody who does this job does the job well, but they got to do it right. And again, it comes back to a lot of those same traits that I had highlighted just a little bit ago.
Radical candor and transparency, right? Hey, how am I doing? I'm not doing well. You're not doing well. It's okay, right? And I really take that feedback in a positive way, and that's what she did. It's really good.
Yeah.
But one challenge we do have, right? I mean, you talked about travel. This is something, obviously I like to travel too, and I meet with customers and all that. But then, setting up these meetings, let's say, you're, the chief product officer, you're trying to set up meetings with customers. Tell us about that process. Is it easy, or I mean, are customers always welcoming? Because that's something, getting the schedules on and all is something.
Yeah, sometimes it's a challenge, right? Depending on the type of individuals within the customers that you're trying to spend some time with. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's harder. One thing that I found is that when I call up somebody or I send a note, I'm like, hey, I'm Jim Hansen. I'm the chief product officer for this company that you use to help run your business. I'd love to just talk with you. I generally find customers are pretty receptive. And depending, but I've also had conversations with customers that are really mad at us, whether it's here at Advantive or other places, right? They're upset for some reason. And so, I actually relish those conversations too, because it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to understand, again, them. And why are they upset? What is it that we have done or what we have not done that's making it a challenge for them to do their business? And what you always uncover is that it's such simple things. It might be that we had a support ticket that we didn't respond to. Maybe we have a bunch of support tickets that we didn't respond to. It could be that they needed something which was going to really help them accelerate the growth of their business, and we just didn't deliver it for them, or maybe we never told them that we were going to deliver it. Who knows, right? And so when you sit down with them, you learn about them, you learn about their business, you learn about who they are and what they need and what they care about. And again, once you understand that, then you can start to think about how you start to adjust your own product strategy to be able to make sure that you're either catering to them. And I might go to a customer and be like, actually, you're not the right customer for me. But usually not the case, right? Like there are a breadth of customers that are usually the right customers. And so then you just got to figure out how to make it all fit. And it's like a big game of Tetris that you got to figure out as part of the resourcing that you have, the things that your customers really care about. And again, I'll bring it back to, you got to find the things that are most important. Right? It's easy to go build a one-off little thing for one customer, but it doesn't help anybody else. So how do you deliver the most value for all the customers that are using your products? It's an incredibly challenging thing to go do. And you can't do it by going and talking to one customer. You got to talk to a whole bunch of them, because then you start to see the trends and you start to see what it is that they all care about. So for me as a chief product officer, I do that way less today in this role than I have in the past. It is my passion. I love spending time with customers and I love getting to know them, because it helps me think about, how do I evolve my business? How do I continue to chart the path of where we need to go as a company to make sure that we're not just following behind where our customers are? I want to get in front of them. And if I can understand them well enough, I can do that, and I can build the best possible products that are going to solve the problems that they don't even know that they have yet.
Yeah, look for patterns, right? So when you work with a lot of customers, you really find the pattern and say, this is the problem you're solving. It's very interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit. You produce both distribution and manufacturing software. So like you said, at the start of this conversation, some distributors are becoming manufacturers now, and some manufacturers also want to distribute, so then they can work directly with the customer.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is heading as a technology provider?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's amazing to me how many manufacturers there are out there and distributors that still use pen and paper and Excel. It's shocking to me that there's, it is and it isn't, right? It's one of those areas where, if I put myself again into the shoes of, let's say, a small distributor, they have money coming in, they have money going out, they have employees to pay, they have all of the expenses that they have as a small business, and they've got to figure out where to spend their money. So where, technology-wise, do they do that? And I believe firmly that technology is an enabler. Technology is how you grow. Technology is how you get rid of the mundane and you let your teams focus on the things that provide value to your customers. And if you can't figure out the right ways to automate and make it easier for them to do your jobs, growth gets stunted to a large degree. And if you look at the growth of companies in general, right? How hard is it as a business to get to be a $1 million business, right? Less than 5% of companies get there. How hard is it to get to a $10 million business? Way harder. It's really hard to do that. And so you kind of put that into the lens of the distributors or the manufacturers themselves. And you realize they've got a big challenge on their hands to figure out the right way to do it, but also to do it so they can still create the margins that they need as a business, right? And that's a challenge. But I do believe firmly that technology is an enabler. Something simple like an enterprise resource planning solution or a manufacturing execution system, a PLM, a PDM. These are the kind of things that make it easier for customers to be able to do their jobs. You think about like a distributor or maybe a manufacturer that is trying to do some distribution on their own. Well, maybe they have a sales guy that has to go to a retail shop and figure out, where am I going to put my products on your shelf? But if you could enable that salesperson to have at their fingertips on an iPad or something, let me just access the inventory and see what do I got available that I can help you to go accelerate your business. You're now providing me as a provider. I'm providing value so they can provide value to their customers, right? So I think technology is critical for growth, right? And you could even start to think about like generative AI and some of these things. I actually think those are more solutions to a problem that is yet to be defined. And so in a lot of cases, when you look at some of what these folks are doing, like I can think of a million different ways that somebody would potentially be able to leverage a generative AI solution or a machine learning kind of solution to be able to go deliver faster information or value to their customers, or just getting their users, their people inside their business to have information at their fingertips. But the question is do they need it, right? And so, I always look at that. I've had multiple people go, Jim, we got to do some AI. I'm like, okay, cool. Why? Why do we need to do it? What problem are we trying to solve? And if we can figure out the right problem and apply that as the solution, absolutely, all in.
You talked about generative AI and all that, right? So, as the chief product officer, like you said, it's about the practical use of the solution, right? Yeah. So where are you really using it? So, there's a lot of technology which is coming out there. How do you decide, hey, you know what, this is the technology I'm going to experiment. Oh, you always keep experimenting.
Yeah.
But how do you decide that this is what I'm going to put on the product? Or is it just based on customer feedback or the practical use? Or how do you do that?
I think this is where strategy has to become a core component to how you decide what to do, right? And strategy is informed. You don't just come up with it out of nowhere. And trust me, like you look at a Bezos or Elon Musk and some of these guys out there, like they're just incredibly smart people who came up with some cool ideas, and they're awesome. Like they just keep coming up with great ideas. That's not how the rest of the world works, right? And so for the average Joe who has to sit down and build a product, I think strategy and understanding what your strategy is really important. And so, for example, you think about something like AI and so forth. I look at that technology-wise, even within Advantive, in a couple different ways. Number one, how can I leverage generative AI and those kinds of mechanisms to just make my team more efficient? Think of something like, I've got all this data sitting inside my CRM. How do I make sense of it? I could sit down and read it all. Well, can I come up with a better way to synthesize the data that's all sitting right in front of me and make it easily accessible so that I can find the information that I really care about, which is the trends? And the answer is, yes, you can totally use generative AI types of mechanisms to be able to do that. Microsoft has Copilot, and there's a bunch of other ones out there in the world that allow you to do that. Can you get more efficient at developing code? Yes, we're actually testing. Our teams are playing around with how can we leverage these tools to just make the development work go faster so that I can get things into the hands of customers faster too. That's the inside side of it, right? And there's, I could probably wax poetic on this for a long time. But the other side of it is then how does a customer take advantage of it? And that is, in my mind, a decision point of, again, what problem are we trying to solve? We are exploring different mechanisms as an example today on how can I leverage AI to get information faster into a salesperson's hand who's out there trying to sell to their customers. Data coming in through your e-commerce platform. How do you look at it in the right way to know what are you selling, where are you selling, how are you selling? Because if you can understand that better, then you can start to make better decisions and again, drive your business. And I believe firmly, control what you can control. And I think those are great examples, right? Like there's a lot of things in the world, whether you're a product company, a software company, or otherwise, where you don't really have a control over things outside of your business to some degree. But I have complete control over the things that we do. I can make those choices. We can decide what we're going to do, but you got to decide based off of data. If you start going off gut, you might make some good decisions, but you might not. So, that's again, another lesson that I've learned, right? And by the way, you might have an opportunity to look at a bunch of data. You might think, gosh, I need more to go make a decision. Sometimes you just got to make a decision. Got to make the decision off of what you got in front of you, knowing that down the road, you may have to make a slightly different decision because the data that you had may be wrong, or the data that you have may be skewed in some kind of way that has led you down a path that is not the right path.
Yeah, decision making is critical, right? You make a decision and then move ahead rather than not doing anything. That's another problem. Jim, what do you do outside of work?
Oh, what do I do outside of work? Boy, I work a lot. I'm kidding. Okay. I a couple things. One, my family is a big volleyball family. I'm a sports enthusiast. I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'6", but I played volleyball in college. All three of my kids play volleyball. We have a court in our back. We play volleyball at home. My daughter actually plays Division I over at Stephen F. Austin here in Texas. And I'll tell you, the competition is super important. Like, I love it. Like, everything in our family turns into a competition, no matter what happens, right? We'll like play a game of cards, turns into a competition. We're like, hey, who can swim faster across the pool? Okay, it turns into a competition, right? But what I love about that is that life is a competition, right? You compete for jobs, you compete for airspace, you compete for time, you compete for everything. Competition is super important, right? And so, my whole life kind of revolves around my kids, my wife, my family, and, we are a really competitive family, right? We you get together with groups, that family night, and like, oh boy, the Hansens are here. You got to watch out for those guys, right? And, but it's a lot of fun though. We do. So I do a lot of that. I love doing outdoor sports, except in the summer in Austin, because it gets pretty hot here.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of what we do. We're a pretty tight-knit family. We spend a lot of time together. When my daughter's in season, I'm usually traveling around the country watching her play. My middle son plays up at Michigan State. My oldest is in the Navy, and he's actually about to get out, but actually tried out for the Navy team. He made it. But then he was always deployed when they were playing, so he never got a chance to play. But he's actually a really good player too. So
tight-knit family, very cool actually. Yeah. So you guys have like weekend nights and all that, or is it like planned weekend nights, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So I mean, we will. Well, the kids are all out of the house right now, right? Yeah. So when it's just my wife and I, we're pretty low key. We'll hang out at the house. I live right here in the Austin area, and we'll go swimming, and we'll kind of just hang out. We'll go for walks. I got 2 little beagles that, if you ever had a beagle, they eat everything and they enjoy barking at everything too. But we will go for walks and just kind of just explore and experience the world. Don't do a lot of traveling. We're a little bit more stay-at-home kind of people, and I love doing research. I read books all the time. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And that's kind of it. I'm not really a very exciting person. I love building products, and so I spend a lot of time reading product books and just trying to figure out how to do it better.
I love the product excitement, actually. Yeah. I think that's exciting.
Sure.
So Jim, I would like to end with this question. What book are you reading right now?
Yeah, so there's a wonderful book by Clayton Christensen called Competing Against Luck. And it's an interesting one because you think about all of the products out in the world. Again, I mentioned Jeff Bezos. I mentioned Steve Jobs, right? Like you go tell Steve Jobs, hey, is it luck? He's like, no, man, I knew exactly what I was doing, right? And I would say a majority of good businesses, they don't get built because of luck. They get built because you control what you can control. This book goes into, it's competing against luck. Like, how do you build the best product, and how do you understand and build the right thing to make sure that you have the maximum chance of being successful in the market, right? And it doesn't happen, as we talked about earlier, right? 5% of companies make it to $1 million. You're like, $1 million? I feel like I can go make $1 million pretty easily. But how do you do that? And companies struggle like every day, and it's a people challenge, it's a product challenge, it's a market challenge, it's a customer challenge. And all of those things have to come together. It's a great book. It talks a lot about strategies that you can employ to be able to do that effectively. It's one of my most favorite books that I've read more recently.
It's very interesting. I think I read something similar in another book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, I think, where they talk about, hey, it's not about luck. You keep trying different things, and you don't know what's going to work, what's not going to work. Just keep trying, and then, like you rightly said, deploy different strategies and see if it works. I'm actually rereading a book right now. It's called Range by David Epstein. Okay. It's a pretty good book too, right? So where it talks about, having a diverse set of skill sets. It's not just one, right? Let's say, if I want to play tennis, it's not about just playing tennis. You play 10 games and decide which game is good for you at a later point in time.
Yeah, sure.
So that's.
I mean, you think kids do that, right? Like, put them in soccer, go put them in baseball, and figure out which one is the one they like the most and they grab. Yeah, I think that's I'll have to read that one as well.
Absolutely.
That's a good one.
I think that's a great book for anybody to read. Yeah, especially for kids, I think. Yeah,
for sure.
Jim, I want to thank you. Thank you for joining The Driven Show. It was great chatting with you. There was a lot of learning on product management. So thank you for joining The Driven Show.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I appreciate you having me here.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Driven Podcast. Check out our other episodes for more, and subscribe to be the first to access every new episode.